You're listening to The Adventuring Party, talking about gaming the Irish way.
Welcome to the party. I'm Dave.
I'm Owen.
I'm SavageMick.
And I'm Scarr, and welcome to our prestige podcast. Why, at only the $1,000 tier, you will get a gold-plated podcast. And if you go up to $1,500, you'll get the special dice, which have our wonderful faces on every 20. And this week, we are here to discuss the phenomenon of the prestige product. And is the opportunity to spend far more of your hard-earned dollar, pound, euro, etc., is it a good thing or a bad thing for our wonderful gaming industry that we love so much?
Would you like the opportunity to be invited to spend a week's wages, perhaps, on a box full of cardboard? If so, welcome to Prestige Gaming. I think we've probably all run our hands across some coveted piece of gaming paraphernalia, our entire products at some point. I'm sure a few of us will have to confess to having a few bling-worthy items in our collections before we're finished today. Dave, prestige products, you come across them much? Is there any particular corner of the hobby where they've infested, you've noticed?
Well, I mean, board games are I suppose the premier example. Fancy components, UV printing, tabletop book RPG books can as well. Faux or actual leather covers. Metal foil printing, and that sort of malarkey.
I am weak, and I do like seeing, just a tiny dusting of gold at the very edge of a piece of paper. I'm weak like that.
Who doesn't like a good collector's edition? Like, if you get a nice one with a lot of extra features, that's often you can justify that to yourself. When it's just fancy binding and stuff, it's a bit more difficult for me. A bit more difficult, not impossible. But I love a good box set, and increasingly box sets are the purview of the limited edition. That if you want the one that comes with a bunch of fold-out maps or some weird handouts or some unusual tokens, you got to splash a little bit more cash.
And you might have to splash that cash in the original campaign, or you might get it at all.
Yeah, absolutely. Like, the thing is, like, a lot of these, the more prestige releases are being done through crowdfunding. With, this is a limited product, we're making this many plus a few extra for replacement damage, and that's it. Buy now or lose out. FOMO rules again.
Yeah, and you mentioned the box set as being the premier option these days, which is funny for the older heads in the audience. I'm sure you remember, maybe even still have squirreled away a box of Thieves' World or original Dark Sun, which were boxed things with maps and sometimes what were referred to, perhaps even now, as tchotchkes. So this was standard. This is the way you got the game, the way you experienced a new world or new campaign in the RPG space. But now they are obviously, when they happen at all, they are north of $200, $300, $400. Which is, and then you do get the full maps and the pins and coins and other bits and pieces, the handouts with the burnt edges, that kind of stuff. So has the Prestige just recreated the fond memories of those who are now well healed enough to afford them? Is there a place for them in the hobby now? Are they perhaps crowding out players that would otherwise avail, or are they taking over product lines for companies that are chasing the whales, as it were, rather than facilitating new entrants into the hobby? There, got the thought out eventually.
It's hard to say because, like, there are still some of those old style box sets around a few places. Oh, I'm just thinking of starter sets these days. Yeah. Whereas maybe in the past, in the 90s, the box set was sort of the purview of, either a starter set or a sort of like campaign settings. I use them a lot. Nowadays, they seem to mostly put down to starter sets specifically. That's in RPGs. And you get, in war games, you do get. It certainly seems in war games these days there's far more of the big army in a box thing that people seem to be selling, at least. This is your basic 500-point army or whatever.
Certainly true for outfits like GW, who I think have absolutely embraced the prestige format in the sense that almost nothing they put out now is meant to cater for a budget gamer. If you want a box of GW stuff, you're paying a hefty premium for the figures. The figures will all be individually sculpted, very often multi-part, and they tend to be sort of dramatic. The poses are dramatic. There's no more of the line infantry looking forward, holding a weapon. It's all sort of guys with foots on tactical rocks, as I've heard them described, and big flowing capes and improbable stuff. I'm looking at a unit of, I want to say there's something called Night Gaunts that came free with the magazine. They're these spindly, sort of wraith-like figures. They're ghosts. They've no feet. They're all floaty bits and pieces, skulls and robes. And these are, as far as I can tell, these are a perfectly normal unit in Age of Sigmar, but there's pointy bits out in every direction. They would be very hard to get in a box, and the idea that you could sort of, they're prestige in every sense, that they're very finicky. 12-year-old me would not have been able to get them together in any, and they were snap fit as well. So.
And these are the ones that are being sold in those magazines.
This is
one a
the
week.
freebies off the front of the first Age of Sigmar magazine. I grabbed them because who doesn't want a unit of ghosts? But they're just an example of obviously GW are putting in huge resources in terms of unique sculpts. Like every single one of them is different. Unique sculpts with very fine detail, but that sort of means that they're moving their attention away from producing regular line units that people can sort of pick up a few boxes of and start playing, towards big champion units, the big battle box sets, or the patrol sets, whatever they're called, that are kind of a €200 buy-in. And those are the discount ways of getting some of those units. But their annual report itself says, look, we're a premier model company. The rule set stuff is buy and buy. They want big spenders who want those models that look good in the display case. And it pushes me towards one of the reasons I suggested this topic is, I think sometimes prestige is good in the hobby, and I think sometimes prestige pushes the hobby or the companies that engage in the hobby into places that leave the people who are actually playing the games behind.
It's particularly concerning if it is a market leader. Now, D&D has the excuse of the actual basic rules are available free online, and we have there are 4 starter sets or something, maybe 5 different box sets with different takes on the same material, and they're all like €40 at most, maybe less. So there are what arguably budget options for stuff like D&D, but GW still the market leader despite everything. But if they're only targeting the big money items, then where's the budget onboarding to Warhammer? Are two
the budget onboarding to Warhammer is you play Warcry or you play Warhammer Underworlds.
The skirmish game, yeah.
Yeah,
And even then,
skirmish games, that's the onboarding. And even now, every one of the core games have a limited play mode it's Crusade in 40k. I'm trying to remember what it's called in Soulbound, where basically like you do like a warband style play, where you have a leader and you have a small selection of units from a smaller pool, and you use them to fight kind of campaigns, and they slow grow in power and they get bigger and bigger over time.
Yeah.
And they've got boarding action is the new also limited play 40k. So they literally have 4 or 5 ways to onboard you. They're selling kind of 100 sterling starters for boarding action. This is a complete boarding action list sort of thing. And they're selling, I think the new starter set that comes out is specifically 2 boarding action forces that you can put together. It's Azrael and the Dark Angels versus Vashtor and his cultists. And basically that's like, these are both boarding action lists. So they are, GW are consciously trying to onboard you all the time now to playing the big boy game, because the big boy game you buy a lot of models for. And everything else is kind of like, okay, you do, because they have the hobbyist thing for them, but they've seen value in the competitive field. Every month they do a meta report on 40k and Warhammer, basically going, this is the current meta, this is the win percentage of this faction, it's too high, we're going to nerf them in the next balance slate. This is the winning percentage of this faction, it's too low, we're going to nerf them in the next thing. So they're looking at get everyone between a 45 and 55% win rate, and that's how they're trying to actively balance the game. So they've seen value in it. They did, like, this last year, for the first time ever, they nerfed a faction before they released. The previous were out there for the Legions of Voltan, and they were like, this is too strong, we don't want you buying models that we're going to nerf almost immediately. So before they're coming out, we're telling you now, this is getting nerfed, this is getting nerfed, and this is getting nerfed. James Workshop did a big presentation about it, like an actual video. Never seen that happen before in the history of GW. I've never seen that happen before. So they are looking to, like, they're trying to onboard you in different ways. They're selling you Warhammer Plus, their TV thing, where there's basically battle reports every week. There's, painting tutorials, other stuff. They're trying to get a little bit more money out of everybody.
Okay. But so when we talk about prestige, I think the big ticket items are where we probably want to focus.
Like, if you look at Games Workshops, what do they sell out of? They sell out of the limited edition hardbacks. They sell right out of them. Every one of the army books has a limited edition format, which is basically like a full art color hardback. Every one of the Siege of Terra books that will come out now for Black Library has a deluxe full leather hardback, giant hardback. So sells out almost instantly. Scalpers are up on eBay. So they are doing the lifestyle. This is the big, this is the big thing to go on the bookshelf sort of thing. And it's like they're making respectable money off that. There's a map to go with it. There's there's various tasks. You might get a bolter shell or something like that. So they're doing, here's the FOMO, you'll not get this again. So crack, and it's selling well. Like, people were like, oh yeah, that's sold out in 15 minutes, and now there's a bunch of stuff up on eBay, and it is that, like, even their box games. Like, the thing about GW is, if you like, I like the look of that limited edition box game, like Dungeon Bowl. I need to buy Dungeon Bowl now. Dungeon Bowl may not be around in 3 years. I may not be able to get this again. Curse City sold out. They did a reprint and then dropped the line. It's like, yeah, well, we've got this other, basically the guts of a second box set. We're going to release it as 2 separate box sets. Oh, they all sold out. We'll redo them again as print on demand. But then they're gone. They're never coming back again. So some GW stuff, you have to buy it when it comes out, or you're not getting it.
Do you think that's a deliberate,
Oh, absolutely.
Does that make it a prestige item, though, limited availability? Because I know some of the most expensive stuff is readily available all the time, but you're going to pay a lot for it. Like their knights and things like that, the really big items.
I think prestige relies on FOMO to a certain extent. So anything that's a limited run is to a certain extent prestige, because you have to get it then and there. You can't wait to pay less. And like, definitely the big prestige, like the big prestige books they do are both out for a limited time and super fancy. But they like a lot of these games kind of rely on the sort of FOMO. Like with D&D, the core D&D books are going to be fine to get, but the more limited stuff they're doing is like will be okay. This is it for a short period of time, or this is super expensive. They're trying to make it a little more elite. Like, have you seen? Like, we looked at the people getting beholder busts and stuff for 600 and 700 euros
Oh
to
God.
put up in their den. You know,
I always wonder what the buyer's remorse in those must be like. They're just
I
very ugly.
I
know,
would
they're-
like
these are not things I'd care to look at every day and go, yes, that is finely
this is
crafted.
what I want.
This is what I want.
I want this severed Vecna head nailed up in my room.
The
Maybe
head of Vecna.
maybe for the terminal loners you get away with it, but I imagine people with partners have very awkward conversations sometimes. Like,
Yeah,
take that. Could you get rid of that? And I paid 700 euros for this. I am not getting rid of it. The pain points that exist there,
Sunk cost fallacy.
Well,
What?
just to think of this cost me 700 euros. If I tried to sell it on eBay, I will get upset, very, very upset. So it's staying up on the wall. This.
If your partner has no particular insight or appreciation as to what this means, then it just looks like a sort of gribbly looking plastic head that you've
And
purchased.
probably a fantastically garish one,
Oh yeah. These are not works of fine art. For 700 euro, you probably get a pretty nice table bronze by a contemporary artist, and no one will bat an eyelid. That you will be considered a person of culture. Or you can have the plastic head that was cast and painted in China and stuck in a box and sent to you. Right. Okay. So prestige. Okay, and the prestige lifestyle items can command crazy money. Statuettes, crazy money. Beadle and Grimm, of course, produce usable prestige items in the form of luxury, fully componented campaigns from a variety of role-playing manufacturers, such as Pathfinder and, of course, GW themselves. They also do the lot of spin-offs for Magic the Gathering and all the various settings that are supported by GW, not GW, D&D, WotC. I'm particularly interested. I think it's fascinating that they do both of the big rivals that they're supporting and putting out big premium Pathfinder sets and really nice ones as well. I'm fascinated to understand what their relationship with those companies are. They're obviously sort of working as third parties in some sense, but like it's as if Forge World were also doing War Machine stuff. Do Forge World do War Machine stuff? They
Don't
should.
think so.
So can we talk about those? What is the value of slapping down 250 north of sometimes 400 smackaroos for the prestige version of the campaign you're planning on running for the next year and a half, say?
Yeah.
Well,
Well, go ahead.
Sorry, shit. Well, some people are completionists, as in if there is some element of the game that exists, a game that they're interested in, they want to have it. And the money mightn't be the biggest concern there, although considering the prices, it probably should be.
I see some of their box sets, the Beadle and Grimm ones, and what they're actually doing is they're playing on nostalgia. The nostalgia for I used to get a box set and there'd be some maps and there'd be some rule books and there might be some tat. And the maps are actually, I think, the big draw for a lot of people. And if you look at what they're doing, they're selling you huge numbers of maps. Some of them are battle maps, some of them are location maps. And they're there specifically to be like the GM has a tactile thing they can pull out and put on the table in front of you. So they are there to kind of not trick you exactly, but certainly convince you that hey, getting these is a cool idea. And they're cool battle maps and they're cool maps of the places you can visit. So they are also in-world player handouts, a big thing. I bought the Cthulhu prop set for Master Nyarlathotep, got a huge amount of value out of it. It was awesome, but it was about 100 quid. So it was the price of the
Chicken
module again.
feed. Chicken feed compared
Yeah,
to
kind
some
of.
of the stuff that you can buy now. So if you want the coins in actual metal, if you want faction badges and jewelry and things, if you want faction coasters for your drinks, that doesn't seem super relevant. Okay, moving on. Dice. I'm quite I mean, these come in big boxes. One of the reasons for that being that I noticed that in a prestige supplement now, you're getting rolled maps rather than folded to preserve their integrity throughout the ages. And then, like, I look at the Spelljammer one here. There's medals and there's miniatures in this one as well. Some of the standout NPCs and monsters that you'll face. I imagine it's still the 3 books, right? Are they worth the money considering the amount of time you're going to spend with them? It's arguable. You could argue that
I think the Beetle and Grimm stuff is right up against the line. They are looking to find the bit where this is the tension between this is a big purchase and this is a worthwhile purchase. And I think they're straddling. Like, I could nearly convince myself if I was there in person and I didn't have to organize shipping, I would be slightly more. I might be sold on some stuff. It depends. The right product might get me. If it was something I was running already, I might be like, I'm running this. This is worthwhile for me because I'm running it. I don't think I'd buy it speculatively on I might be able to use this. Like, no, if I was running something for this, I might talk myself into it.
Yeah,
If I wasn't,
I know I'm way more easy to convince if I can see the product in my hand than have it just be online as a sort of news piece on the gaming websites.
Yeah, shipping is a big factor in some of these premiums, especially because one of the things I've noticed about premium and the 30th edition, 40th edition Magic the Gathering debacle really brought this into sharp focus for me. The premium, sometimes all you need to be premium, it comes down to packaging. Those 4 boosters you could buy came in this cube of cardboard. There were several layers to it. It was like unboxing an iMac. And that all adds to the volume of the thing and the weight of the thing. And having worked in logistics for a little while, volume and weight really kick up that shipping price.
Yeah.
So when you've got something that has miniatures and rolled maps and slipcover books and other things that are each going to come in their own presentation box, shipping goes way up. So, I mean, you're looking at another maybe 20% on top of what is already a very expensive item.
Plus VAT if you're shipping to
Plus,
Ireland,
if it's coming internationally, customs might decide to have a peek in your package, and you're going to get stung for who knows how they'll value it.
Well, they'll be like, okay, this is all books. Okay, no VAT on books. Oh, there's a plastic miniature in this, including
or a
this.
pack of
The
cards.
whole thing gets 20% VAT on it.
Yeah.
So, but of course, for the sorts of people who wouldn't flinch at paying for these things, that's probably just the cost of having the best Magic set or D&D collection on the block. Whereas, so one place I think Prestige has benefited almost universally now, and although it does push the price of things up, are board games. Can we talk a little bit about how board games have adopted Prestige ideas and presentation to bring us, frankly, better board games?
Yeah, I played Oathsworn, which is a very good board game. It's a complex boss battler. And my Oathsworn, I paid 200 or something for it, which is a price you'll never get again now when they do the reprint, but because it massively spiraled out of control in terms of production values. But it came in 4 board game size boxes. Because instead of doing 28 mil figures, they did 54 mil figures for everything.
4 board game size boxes.
4 board game size boxes.
Oof.
This game is never going to retail.
Yeah.
They've said this is never going to retail. It's just not feasible. So they had a version with standees, but the one I got had the minis, and the minis were giant minis. And the terrain was giant terrain. So I got the core box, I got the 2 mini boxes, and I got the terrain box. And that was all 4 board game size boxes. And then there were 2 smaller supplementary boxes. So it came in 6 boxes. I played it. I had a ton of fun with it. I played about 30 hours of it. I've got to go back and play the next 30 hours at some point. But I had a ton of fun with it. Very good. Was really cool because every time you went to fight a new boss, you got to go to the big box, you got to reach in, you got to pull out a numbered box and open it, and you'd never seen the boss mini before that. So
Right.
there was a
Yeah.
real feeling of discovery and, what are we fighting? What are we fighting? I don't know what we're fighting. We gotta figure it out. We gotta do some research in the adventure before the next fight. We gotta figure out what the monster we're fighting is.
I'm
And oh
looking
my
at the
god, it's a
Kickstarter.
giant, it's a giant rat covered in baby rats, And that's the first monster. It's like basically, but every other monster after that is a discovery. It's like I don't know what it is. I don't know what it is. We got to go back and look at the thing again, open the secret envelope, and then open the box. And there was a real feeling of discovery, and you're fighting against the unknown. And unlike another game where when you're opening the box, you'll see what all the minis look like. You don't in this one. You have no idea what the monster looks like. You have no idea who the final boss is because that's box 22, and you have no box 22 yet. So there's a
Hmm.
real tangible sense of discovery and thing. But the cost of doing that was 4 board game size boxes. And I'm not talking regular board game size boxes. I'm talking 4 Gloomhaven size boxes.
Oof.
Completely impractical.
That
This must be
sounds
as tall as a sort of a small person. Is that if you stack those up? Is that nearly 4.5, 5 feet?
Well, it's certainly 3 feet,
3 feet. Okay, yeah.
Hold on.
I haven't eyeballed
Uh,
Gloomhaven in a while.
It is.
I'm looking at the Kickstarter. And the production values are off the chain. This
Yeah,
only did 2 million. That's
yeah.
insane.
They did a second one, with the reprint, which did pretty well. But yeah, this is like it's ridiculous. Like each of those boxes there, you see
This
that
looks fantastic.
there's 4 boxes that size,
Yeah.
right?
Wow.
So you see one of the monsters there is basically a worm, and it comes in 3 pieces because there's the head of the worm, there's the body, and there's the tail.
Oh yeah.
They're sticking out of the ground. It's burrowing through it. Phenomenal game, very clever. Much more approachable than some of its cousins in the boss battling arena, but just impractical in terms of how much space it takes up and how
Do
much.
you mind me asking, just for the
Yeah,
edification of our listeners, how much? What's the sticker
I
price on
paid
this?
300 for my thing.
Kind of seems
Plus,
reasonable.
oh, that was too little.
Yeah.
I paid
Compared to
300 plus. I think I paid 30 or 40 shipping. And they had to come back to us and ask us very nicely for some extra money for the shipping because the price of shipping massively went up.
yeah. Well,
And in return for the price of the shipping that we paid, they said, "Okay, you get this stuff. We're going to do some extra stuff for you for free in a later Kickstarter, and you get 10% off anything we make ever again." It gives
and they've
a lifetime 10% off voucher.
and just to double down on the premium aspect of this, you've got obviously a nicely produced rulebook, but there's also an app voiced by James Cosmo, a
Yeah,
Hollywood actor. It's like for the app. It's like when you discover that's Sean Connery in to do the announcements in an elevator. It's like
it's
they've
actually a
spared
really
no expense.
good, really well voice acted app. It's
I
one
can
of the best.
imagine.
It's one of the best. They did a second edition of this, and it got 22,000 backers and made about 3.2 million because a bunch of the backers were returning backers who were getting the extra bits and pieces again.
Right. And
So
custom dice, lots of decks of cards, card holders, token
yeah,
holders, all sorts of not to mention all
18
the minis.
kilograms the core pledge weighed.
Well, and there's a storybook.
No, and the
Also,
collector's all in pledge, what I got weighed 25 kilograms.
25 kilos.
25 kilos.
Okay. So, like, I mean, if you consider that just 25 kilos of anything that only costs you 300 smackers is, I'm never going to say reasonable, but my goodness, the value for money. You've played through this, of course. Have you finished it?
I played through. We played through boss 12,
So there's
and so
loads of meat left in it.
halfway through, and that was a good 40 hours. We spent a week. We spent 5 days playing through that, and it was just really solid gameplay, like good mixture of kind of an adventure mode and a tactical combat mode where you're fighting against the boss. I've got a review of it up on, if you're on the Discord, you can
Oh yeah,
go check out the board games tab. I've got a
there you go,
couple of
folks. Join our Discord.
2,000 or 3,000 word
Absolutely.
review of it, explaining, laying out what it was like, what was good, what was bad.
And you're quite taken with the actual gameplay.
Oh yeah,
Never mind
absolutely,
the physicality of it.
100%. One, I'd be much like if someone said, "Oh, I want to play a complex boss battler," that would be my number 2 choice if I had everything available, because I'd be like, okay, this is not going to weird you out as much as Kingdom Death is, and it's not going to be as difficult as Aeon Trespass is. It's going to be a lot more. It's going to be, if you want effectively a medium weight boss battler with some great story stuff in it, yeah, you'd be super happy with that experience. Like
So
yeah,
this is where board game prestige, I think, benefits. The money's there, the design quality is there in terms of the mechanical design, and
yeah,
it's being backed up by best in class in industry, model design, layout design, tokens, cards, everything else. This is, and honestly, when you consider all of the things that they're getting right in the board game space, you do tend to look at. I personally would sort of cast my eye back to something like, say, the Spelljammer Premier box set, which costs a lot more than that. You certainly don't get 25 kilos worth of gear, and it's still the same book that was written and not terribly well reviewed, or didn't review terribly well on its release. And it seems to me that all the prestige in the world won't fix the writing. So I think we should reflect on that when we consider what is and isn't worth the money for the premium product. Right. So any other
yeah. I
aspects of
want to
prestige?
just point you to one thing which I looked at and again said too rich for my blood.
Oh yeah.
Dwarven Forge did their new Kickstarter.
Mm, the
Did anyone take
city
a
one,
look at their
the
one?
dock, the
Cities and
docks one.
Pearls.
Yeah.
Anyone take a look
Yes,
at that one?
I have a friend who has quite heavily invested in Dwarven Forge, and we were talking about it the other day. So yeah, this is
I would call it investing too at these prices. They had 3.5 million on this Kickstarter with 2,621 backers. So that means on average a backer threw in about $1,300, right?
yeah,
However, if you take a look at it, right, 1,000 of those backers, 1,100 of those backers were $10 pledges, who will basically get to buy stuff later on in the pledge manager.
yeah. They're kind of the paycheck backers. They
Yeah,
stake a claim now, and they'll figure out what they can
exactly.
pump into it later on.
So you're actually looking at a lot of people were throwing in $3,000-4,000 in this one. You had
Looking back at the previous campaigns where a similar thing would have happened, they get 3 to 4 million. Reported eventual pledges top out at something like 10 or 11. So
yeah,
they easily double whatever numbers they've got on the day of completion,
there were
if not more.
45 backers paying $9,000 for the Quad District.
Yeah. So Dwarven Forge, for those of you who don't know, is a somewhat magnetic, snap together rain set for 25, 32 mil, primarily medieval fantasy focused. And this set is a sort of a low town dockland set with lots of modularity, so you can build a lot of different buildings from the pieces you buy. I think those magnetic connect toys, except with they're fully featured with tiles or with wall details and lights. You can add a smoke dispenser to the building so that smoke comes out the chimney. All this kind of stuff. Now I've played on an extensive Dwarven Forge set on a couple of them. They are a joy to regard because the premiere version of this comes painted. So you're talking, take it out of the box and just start building the Legos for your next scenario. Very versatile, but you are paying a massive premium.
Yeah.
Not cheap, but very, very good.
Yeah, and but I was just looking at it and going, okay, you could, if I was the biggest Necromunda player in the world, or sorry, in Mordheim, I
Oh yeah,
might have been able to talk myself into this.
If that's the game you're playing all day, every day,
Yeah,
well,
or at least I play a lot of. I was just like,
yeah.
I prefer to play Warlock, pay for some Warlock tiles or something. That if I wanted some kind of assemblable terrain or some dungeons and laser stuff, which is like more my not cheap, but also like to get a good chunk of stuff. You're kind of tossing down probably $2,000 here, I think, and like that.
and
Maybe that's the game.
that's for one type of terrain. It's one theme.
Yeah,
As soon as someone goes, "Let's go to the woods," you're like, "Well, we're back to paper
yeah,
maps."
and you know, it looks great. It absolutely does. It's cast from Impenetrable Dwarvenite.
Oh yeah, this stuff's
Their
chonky. You
proprietary.
can hurl this
Yeah,
stuff and not worry too much about
no
it.
cats can destroy this. No,
I mean,
no.
whoever owns it will come and kill you, but it will receive no damage. And like these are detailed interiors and exteriors,
Yeah.
so you've got lots of use here. Yeah, Dwarven
So
Forge
people
is really
discussing.
really nice.
No, you don't need to be wealthy to buy this. You can live frugally and purchase these.
Get enough of it, you can probably live inside them.
Yeah, I just like the idea of no. We live frugally. We don't. We don't go out. We don't have our avocado and toast. Our spare cash goes into Dwarven Forge purchases. And it looks they look fabulous. They absolutely look fabulous.
Does it justify the price? Is this
Oh,
where does this fall on the prestige, but probably
uh,
mal spent and prestige? And yes, this adds to the game.
it would add. How much it would add, I'm not sure. If I was the biggest Mordheim player in the world, I would have talked myself into this. But I'm not the biggest Mordheim player in the world. Like, if I was like, okay, I'm going to buy a set of the best set of Mordheim terrain there's ever been, the most modular set of Mordheim terrain there's ever been, I'm going to get this, and that's going to be my Mordheim set. I think I could have basically talked myself into it. As is, no, it's not doable. You know, just too pricey. But because there's a storage aspect to this as well, this stuff has got to be stored somewhere. And
Yes, it does, but I'd actually say that. So I'm kind of weighing up: is this worth it or not? I'd actually say the storage is something it has in its wheelhouse or in its corner. I'm currently, as I sit here, I'm looking at a filament printed building that I'm painting for a friend, and it's as big as any of the examples that the Kickstarter has for Lowtown, and it's in roughly the same style. It's kind of a rundown in. Now the thing is, about 12 inches in every direction. It's a cube in terms of its volume. It comes in three parts, but it is a cube. It is a foot of space that has to be accommodated somewhere. And I'm glad I'll be giving it back when I'm finished. It takes a lot of space. However, you could build roughly the same. I know you'd pay an awful lot more for the components to build it, but those components could be shoved into a box that is much smaller than a cube squared. This is is going to go back to my friend's house and exist somewhere. And because it's now been painted, they'll have to keep it. Now, it cost a hell of a lot less to produce. Like they printed themselves, so it cost the electricity and filament and the STL file, which I imagine comes out to half the cost of one component for Dwarven Forge. So there's that. Like that's what you get. I mean, you've got portability, you've got toughness. It's already pre-painted. No one had to paint it.
I think I think one of the big things with these sort of purchases is your awful lot of the value to the buyer is in what I guess an economist would call incomparables. Stuff like customer satisfaction, stuff like that joy of the mystery of opening up your 12th boss and this one is a spider but with an octopus on its face, or that kind of the warm fuzzy feeling of having bought something really cool. It's very hard to put a dollar price on it, and some people will price that very highly, particularly if it's a unique product with none of the other plebs will ever touch this. Yeah, so like you're sort of comparing incomparables there. Like people will always feel they got their money's worth. Well, not always, but that's the emotional core behind this sort of movement is like you're dealing with a lot of feeling. And yeah, there's a certain cool feeling of I've got something unique and no one else has it.
Yeah.
But I mean, all gamers are a very diverse lot, and some people like will fetishize usability. And no one.
Feeling a little scene here. Go on.
Yeah.
You've got me.
But like, everyone's got a different thing. Like some people, I mean, we all heard tales of the people who like will refuse point blank to buy a 20 euro paperback core book, but they'll buy t-shirts and mugs and all this sort of stuff because for different levels of product with different uses, both physical, in-game, and emotional. People have different price tolerances. Some people will buy the highest quality books because they want to run the hell out of a game, and they'll buy their Beetle and Grimm's because they want every single handout or map or tchotchke to add to the experience of the game. And some people will say, I'm going to make it all up using these free online generators. But that statue I'm going to use one time at the very end of the campaign, and then it's going to sit on my shelf carrying dust. That's what I want. I want that moment, or So, yeah, there's a huge amount of emotionality behind these kinds of big purchases, and that makes it hard to draw a line under one, as certainly from the customer's point of view, whether this phenomenon is good, bad, or I guess if I have any criticisms, I would worry about it from the producer side. Like, absolutely, there's going to be a big niche, or of what was it like? The classic thing is like 20% of the customers spend 80% of the money. That's just sort of how modern society works. But are prestige companies taking over too much and squeezing out the little man? I think it really depends on the industry. As I say, it's different between stuff like D&D and stuff like GW, but also that raises questions for market leaders. Like, how many cheap inroads to the hobbies do stuff the likes of Magic the Gathering, Games Workshop? How much leeway do they have to give in for the penniless 12-year-old who has scraped together enough buttons and lint to afford their first booster pack, versus the people paying $4,000 for 60 random cards? Like I think that's where the debate is.
Very true. And yeah, I think the bigger companies are better positioned to produce the on-ramps and the highest quality items. There is this question as to whether, presumably Beetle and Grimm do all right selling to those 20 or even the 20% of the 20% with the highest quality option without any need for a middle or entry tier. Most middle of the pack producers, of course, have to balance the opportunities. Dave, any final thoughts on the quality or the desirability of prestige items? We're going to wrap this one up.
Yeah, I suppose the question of whether they're worth it is very individual. And has been discussed at length already, and yeah, I hope it doesn't result in people being put off picking up interesting board games because of they're priced out of it.
Okay, Owen.
It's definitely an individual thing. I totally get that point from Scar. I think everyone has, based on the amount of disposable cash they have in their own life, a threshold for this. Everything below this is a purchase that anyone can choose to make at any time, and above this amount is egregiously expensive and whale bait. Everyone's got their own little line on that one, where this is how much money I'll spend without thinking about it, and above this money, this is the money I have to very carefully consider. I think that threshold's different for everybody, but there is absolutely a whale bait stuff out there that is driving some companies and they're able to thrive off it. And that's probably a good thing. And the rest of us can enviously look at it. Or in the case of possibly the black dragon head bust that someone sticks in their wall, stare aghast at it. I think it's great. It's fine, and I think there's some interesting ideas in there, and it's a way to do some, I think, nostalgic stuff where you remember the Dark Sun box set as this unimpeachable pile of, there was such high quality. When in reality, you go back, you look, and it wasn't that many. It wasn't that many books, but it had a lot of cool stuff, and the maps were exciting, and the flip books were exciting. And you're looking at going, you're selling nostalgia, I think, with some of it, which is grand. You can sell nostalgia. Nostalgia sells very well, particularly to people with grown up incomes. So I think that's great.
Okay, Scar. Anything to add?
I would say, make your own choices on how much you want to spend. Don't feel guilty about your personal purchases. It's your money. We live in a society where people are considered to be responsible for money, and don't worry too much about spending what other people might think is too much. It's about your personal satisfaction. As long as you're happy with the purchase, um, uh, don't complain about other people's purchases and feel confident in your own. I will say though that watch your industry. Make sure that if someone starts really specializing in the big stuff, that they have something in the wings for if the market were to implode. We have many tales of a financial collapse happening because of people assuming the bubble would grow forever and the whales would never run dry. If you want to see how going after whales works, look at today's whale populations in our actual oceans. So, consume, no ethical consumption and all that. Be happy with your purchases, but it's not wrong to also say to the companies, hey, maybe make a starter set or maybe make something middle priced for other people. Just consider everyone.
There's perhaps money even in the world of prestige items. Perhaps there's money left on the table. I'd note two things before we wrap up here. One, that sort of cautionary note along with Scars is beware the prestige product that locks something away. That prestige products that add things, great. Add a dimension to the game you're playing, fantastic. Prestige products that exclude or take away or withhold something that honestly should have been in the core product, I'm very dubious of. And for those of us who don't have huge amounts of disposable income, there's a philosopher whose name I failed to bring to mind just now. I'll try and include a link, who made a great point that stuck with me about expensive doesn't have to cost a lot of money. Something can be expensive for the category it's in without costing a huge amount of money. A prestige set of dice in, say, a semi-precious stone might cost 2 or 3 times, maybe 4 times more than a regular set of dice. But that, in the greater scheme of things, isn't a lot of money. And if they mean something to you, and if you're going to get that that value out of them, then go ahead. Hero Forge minis, I think, are a perfect example. You can now design almost down to the whiskers on your chinny chin chin, your perfect model for role playing, and get the STL file for less than $10. From there, 3D printing is fairly cheap, but every time you put that character down to play in any number of campaigns that you choose to use them in, that is going to be your prestige premier thing, and easily done for less than the cost of a core book, which, as miniatures go, quite expensive. We're up into GW territory there. But you designed it. It's yours. It's completely unique. And how much more prestige do you need than there's only one of these in the world? So, on that thought.
I'm curious. Is that the same Hero Force that just ran that random paper doll website in like 2002? Is that the same website as
Perhaps.
Muted?
Perhaps. I mean, Netflix got their start mailing DVDs to people. Who knows? But on that note, folks, consider what's in your pocket, what's in your heart. But for now, this party's over. Thank you for listening to The Adventuring Party. If you'd like to leave us a voicemail, you can head on over to SpeakPipe and drop us a line. Or you can join us on our Discord server, where we keep the party going after hours. Otherwise, you can find us on Facebook, YouTube, Spotify, Twitter, or you can email the hosts at party@theadventuringparty.net. The Adventuring Party is released under a Creative Commons Attribution Non-Commercial Share-alike version 3 license, but you probably knew that already. We hope you enjoyed the episode, and look forward to seeing you back here next week. Goodbye. Okay, that was pretty good. A little longer than we'd anticipated, but thankfully there's plenty to talk about. I will find a link to that chap, because it's a brilliant video. It's about the philosophy of gifting. He used socks as the example. Someone gave him a $20 pair of socks, like cashmere wool, incredibly comfortable. Who'd pay $20? You'd never spend it on yourself. And $20 isn't a lot of money, but every time he puts on these socks, like these luxury socks, these socks feel amazing. I think we hit some good points there. Okay, stopping recording. That might even make it into the end of the episode.